Last week's Network Q Rally of Great Britain saw Mark Higgins storm to victory in the front-wheel drive Formula 2 class, driving his 2-litre Volkswagen Golf GTI. But this isn't it. This is a diesel.
Come on, Tiff. Come on, ride in this.
It's all right. I want the real one to come on.
Come on, you're really impressed.
I won't like it. I won't like it.
Come on, feel the noise. Girl.
Campaigning a turbo diesel Golf GTI for the past 2 years, and he took me round the Sweet Lamb rally stage to show me what it could do. And not even the abysmal Welsh weather could dampen his enthusiasm.
How much power's this diesel thing got then?
Yeah, this is 220 horsepower.
Yeah, but the petrol ones have got 280 horsepower.
Yeah, but where this engine really scores is it's got a tremendous amount of torque. The petrol engine doesn't have the same amount of torque as this car by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, but more torque, what's that going to do for you?
Well, we're going up a hill now, and this will really put the power down as we go up here in order to maximise the traction that the engine's got.
There's a big drop over there, by the way, Neil.
Over there, don't worry.
No revs, though, it's all a bit quiet.
Yeah, no, this engine only revs to 4,400 RPM. The equivalent petrol engine will rev to 9,000. You can change up at 4,400 RPM and it will still pull. It's because of the tremendous torque.
So it's a very different characteristic to drive.
Oh, tremendously so, yeah.
Diesel fumes don't go away, do they?
It's a very green car. It's the greenest car in the British Rally Championship at the moment.
But he pongs, though.
This year, Neil contested that British Rally Championship in a class set up specifically to allow diesels to compete. His was the only diesel to enter, so it won. But using half the fuel of his petrol-head opponents, he took a superb second place overall on the all-tarmac Max Rally in September.
All right, Neil, I'm impressed. OK, well, can I have a go now?
Oh, I'm not so sure about that, Tiff. You racing drivers are a little bit out of your depth on these kind of terrain. Maybe we'll go and have a cup of tea or something and we can have a chat about it.
Yeah, nice idea. Cup of tea. Good idea, Neil.
There's one born every minute.
Tiff?
Now, what did Neil say? What was change up early? 4,500 revs. That's ridiculous. I'm in 5th gear already. Now up the hill, change early. That's got bogged down. Now that's tricky, you see. I changed up just a bit too soon. The problem is, I'm terrified of over-revving it, but you get a bit of wheel spin, and then you change up, and it drops it too low in the revs. Oh God, there's that jump around it. He takes in 5th gear, or I don't want to take it in about 4th gear, I think. Ooh, whoa. So a very different driving technique, and yet a very impressive performance. And it's slushy, but I just love this rallying game. Even in a diesel. Mind you, having said that, it doesn't quite have the same sensual pleasures of 8,000 or 9,000 revs. The more revs you've got, the more power you've got. It's a sort of bit of an acquired taste, I guess.
Diesels may still be both smelly and noisy, but there's no doubt that with new state-of-the-art turbo diesel technology, they're no longer an embarrassment in the performance stakes. And Volkswagen have now produced a trendy new 6-speed Golf GT TDI to make the most of all that torque.
As Kermit the Frog once said, it isn't easy being green. The trouble is with a recyclable, organic, dolphin-friendly lifestyle is that it's not much fun. Yet every year, manufacturers at the motor shows trot out another attempt at the perfect eco car, which is all very worthy, but not very exciting. or so you might think. This is the Honda Insight. We saw it at the London Motor Show, and now it's here on the road. A small, spry coupe boosting sleek and stylish looks atop a chassis that's primed to put a smile on your face. The Citroen-esque skin cuts a dash, and it's been designed to slip through the air with minimal resistance. This is quite literally the greenest car I've ever driven, and I don't just mean the colour. It may look like a sports car, but the Honda Insight is in fact a petrol-electric hybrid. Now, wait for it. This is much more fun than it sounds. So before you switch off, let's talk technical. Under its sleek and low bonnet is a 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol engine giving 67 brake horsepower. But, and here's the clever part, it has a built-in electric motor, which can boost total power to 75 brake horsepower. The electric engine remains idle until you need extra acceleration. Then it whirs seamlessly into life, providing a welcome performance boost. And because of its electric helping hand, the petrol engine can be smaller and therefore greener, yet performance is equal to a good 1.5 litre. Plus, the batteries are charged by the petrol engine, so you don't need to plug it into the mains at night. But does this ingenious coupling of current and combustion power actually work? Well, yes, it does. Performance is tolerable. 60 arrives in a reasonable 12 seconds, and all out, the Insight will reach 112 miles per hour. And this is a 1-litre engine we're talking about. Honda claim this car can do 83, that's 83 miles to the gallon. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about the Insight is just how normal it feels to drive, whereas the Toyota Prius, which uses similar technology, only uses electric power at low speeds. The Insight's petrol engine runs all the time until you come to a stop. And then it cuts out in the interests of economy and emissions. Select first gear, and it starts up again, all by itself. Magic. With the extra urge from the electric motor, the Insight scuttles about with alacrity and turns into corners with vim and vigour. And the interior's thoroughly practical as well. It's got good, comfortable, racy seats, lots of headroom, and the visibility is vastly improved because there's a glass strip in the flap of the boot, which means you can see everything. The dash, beautifully laid out, all push button, no fiddling about. And to cut down in-car emissions, there's no ashtray and there's no cigarette lighter. In the quest for lightness and thus efficiency, the whole thing is made from aluminium and sundry bits of plastic. So even with the bulky batteries on board, an Insight is slightly lighter than a Ford Ka. As of next April, you'll be able to buy this concept car technology from your local showroom, making it the first production hybrid on sale in Europe. But it's not all a rolling green clover if you buy an Insight. For a start, it will cost you £16,000, which puts it in the same bracket as another groovy coupe, the Ford Puma. And although the Insight boasts amazing miles to the gallon figures, the Puma will maul it for performance. Plus, the Insight only has 2 seats because the back is taken up by all those batteries. Nonetheless, as a practical solution to spiralling fuel costs, the Honda Insight is amazingly effective. And it really is a stylish and enjoyable car in its own right. If you were to swan around in this raffish little coupe, no one would suspect its eco-intentions. But your neighbours might be green with envy.
Fact. Most people, when confronted with the idea of buying a car at auction, would rather cut off bits of their anatomy.
Fact. Auctions are still the best place to buy a classic car for the lowest possible price. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this lot.
Sold. How about this 1976 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow? Drives well, looks well, sits well. Owner wants £8,000, but it's actually worth around £6,000. But with the market in the state it is at the moment, it's always worth making a sporting bid. You never know what's going to happen. And Rolls's may have lost their cachet in some quarters, but at this sort of money, you can afford to be ironic. It may be 70s kitsch, but that, I'm told, is now deeply fashionable.
But if the Rolls isn't kitsch enough, then there's this utterly ridiculous 1965 stretch checker cab. This puts modern MPVs in the shade, seating 11 people with enough boot space for all their worldly possessions. It's done 19,000 miles, allegedly, and the last owner who bought it in 1990 did 9 miles. He obviously loved it then. So you could use it to take your mates on holiday or make a big impression with the opposite sex. And then spend the next 2 years trying to sell it. Brilliant.
But for those laying claim to a level head, there are some altogether more practical propositions like this 1962 Triumph TR4. American import, steering wheel on the left-hand side. Nothing wrong with American imports, especially if they come from dry states. That means they won't be rusty. When you're looking at classic cars, look for clues. Here we've got a tax disc from Miami Beach and from New York, neither of which are dry states. This car's been restored, but not brilliantly. The panel gaps are all over the place. You can get Joe Brand through here. Right colour, right wheels, but it needs a good £2 spending on it. It'll make between 4 and 4.5, which is about right money, much more, and then it starts to get expensive. This, on the other hand, is much, much more interesting. A very, very bonny 1976 Alfa Romeo Spider 2000. Now this is that rare thing, a rust-free Alfa Romeo, because it's come from California. Very level, very straight, very original. The only non-standard thing is one headrest. It's got the 5-speed box. Altogether, a nice little car. Owner says he'll take between 4 and 4.5, making it a rather cheap little trinket for the King's Road.
But all that glitters is not gold. This Ferrari 400 is up for between 8.5 and 10.5k. Fantastic, you might think. It's a Ferrari for Fiesta money. Whoa there, Tonto. It may be from the Prancing Horse stable, but this is the least desirable Ferrari ever made, and you'll need a sack of cash to run it. Remember, if you're going to an auction, wear your sensible trousers.
And the car you would need to be most cautious about is this. It's a 1965 Aston Martin DB6. And as you can see, it is well past its first flush of use. It's been in a barn for 12 years. It needs a new interior. The chassis shot, complete respray required, and a complete mechanical overhaul. Ironically, this car has attracted more interest than any other at the whole auction. And there are people coming from all ends of the country to view it. The brutal, unpalatable fact of the matter is you would need to spend £50,000 getting this car up to apple pie order, and at the end of the day, it would be worth 20. Let's face it, there are far more entertaining ways of losing £30,000 than that.
So there it is. Lead with your head and not with your heart, and you could end up with a bargain. But let sentiment get the better of you, and you may be limping away with a turkey.
Stay with us, because in a few minutes we'll show you what some of this lot fetch, plus some handy hints and tips on buying your next classic under the hammer.
Now, a short story. Once upon a time, a man who lived in Singapore dreamt of owning a Porsche 911 GT1, just like the ones he'd seen racing at Le Mans in faraway France. So he worked very, very hard and earned enough pennies to buy one of the 20 £500,000 road-going versions that were made, and had his dream shipped all the way to Singapore. Sadly, he forgot one rather important thing. All the 911 GT1s were made with left-hand drive, and it's illegal to take a left-hand drive car on the roads in Singapore. So here he enjoys sits, all alone in the showroom where it was bought, unable to fulfill its potential. But the owner has kindly allowed me to take it for a teeny-weeny drive. No, not on a test track, but on the only place it can go, the road round and round the showroom. this car could leap from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. It could rush to a top speed of 192 miles an hour. But it can't here, because all I can use is bottom gear.
America, land of the gas guzzler, where they just love their big, thirsty V8 engines. But in 1975, it looked like their days were numbered when the worldwide oil crisis meant the Yanks had to pay more than a bag of pretzels for a tank of fuel. So the American Motor Corporation came up with an alternative they felt sure would clean up. A small hatchback with an economical engine, the AMC Pacer. Unfortunately, the reality behind this cutesy little motor didn't quite work out as planned. The Pacer was specifically designed for a new, clean and frugal rotary engine, but this turned out to be dirty and very thirsty. So AMC hastily re-engineered the car to squeeze in a much more bulky 3.8-litre six-cylinder unit. The big engine did a mere 18 miles per gallon, which for a self-built economic car was pretty fatal. Performance wasn't a strong point either, the dash to 60 taking 14 seconds before giving up the ghost at 105. Now, between you and I would not like to be in this car at that speed because even though you're a driver, you do feel like a passenger. And if you hadn't opted for the power brakes, stopping this thing will split your thighs.
Introducing the AMC Pacer, the first wide small car.
Never mind the quality, feel the width. The Pacer's most striking feature is its huge girth compared to the relatively short length.
I didn't know it was that wide.
The idea was to have the high manoeuvrability of a short wheelbase whilst offering a spacious interior, and to be fair, it really works. Another wacky idea is this door, which is wider than the one on the driver's side so that children can stumble straight onto the pavement with minimal squeezing. Now, this is all fine and dandy in the US, but rather lethal when they converted it to right-hand drive. It fared even worse abroad than it did in the States, but everyone was scared off by the radical egg-shaped design. It soon became known as the upside-down bathtub. There are some redeeming features, though. Let me think. Oh yes, the ride is like a magic carpet for such a small car, and you can hear nothing but the thumping beat of the engine. All this glass gives the cabin a really lovely airy feel, but it makes air conditioning an absolute must, which knackers the fuel consumption. Pretty soon, word got around about its litany of faults. The electrics were temperamental and the steering prone to seizing. Combined with overall build problems, this meant that within 2 years, sales of the hatchback started to fall at an alarming rate. So AMC began to promote their larger, more conventional estate.
Pacer wagon for 1978. This year, more than ever, Pacer represents superior value.
The late 70s Pacers featured an even thirstier 4.2 straight 6 and a V8. And when the second oil crisis hit in '79, the Pacers' days were numbered. It still had its supporters. Stunt supremo Evel Knievel, country star Conway Twitty, yes, really, and Brigitte Bardot all owned them. And when it was featured in the Wayne's World movie as the Mirthmobile, it found a whole new bunch of fans.
You get fun reaction everywhere you go. Anybody that sees it.
People grin when they see that Pacer. They love it. They put thumbs up and they grin.
I thought it was a real chick magnet.
I married my husband for the Pacer.
The worst thing is, I guess, that someday it'll wear out.
The Pacer stopped beating in 1980, and as its unique platform couldn't be adapted for other models, the expensive tooling had to be dumped. 8 years later, AMC was taken over by Chrysler. Since then, the Pacer's quirky short bonnet design has become more popular with modern cars, and the back end looks suspiciously similar to the rear of Porsche's 928. And who knows, if Chrysler made the rather nondescript neon look like this, then the Pacer perhaps would have the last laugh.
So, the moment of truth, auction day. Now, it might look dauntingly terrifying, but it isn't. Follow our simple guide, keep your senses peeled, look and listen, and you'll see that now is the time to pick up a cut-price classic.
But research is everything. Trust no one and root through all the paperwork yourself. Our Aston allegedly had a guaranteed mileage of 51,000, yet we found an old invoice for work at 98,000. Naughty. Check too that there are actual bills to support any restoration work. And go early to crawl over the car from top to bottom. And if you don't know your axle from your elbow, then pay someone who does. Just make sure you know what you're doing, because classic cars are just very old second-hand cars. When the bidding kicks off, set yourself a limit and stick to it. It's a buyer's market, so you can afford to keep your hands in your pockets until the next auction. And you'll have to pay buyer's premium. This one was set unusually high at 15% on the hammer price.
Now, it's easy to get seduced by all this shiny metal, but you've also got to look at the cars that haven't been prepared, because nobody's trying to take any money out of them, no profit. Now, you might be thinking that this is a very tired, sorry 944. I'm here to tell you that it's actually a very original, decent, unmolested car. You don't need to respray this bonnet. All it needs is a weekend with T-cut. These wheels here, they might put you off, but 25 quid, they'd come up like new, 100 quid the set. Come and have a look at this. I'm having to whisper in case anybody hears me, but look, it's reading 79,000 miles. Look at that seat, absolutely unworn. Look at the carpets, perfect. The pedal rubbers, the gear lever. This is probably a genuine mileage car. In the glove box is a Porsche service history. Now, I've spoken to the auctioneers, and I know that I am the first person to ask for the keys. So nobody's opened it up, nobody's started it up. I have. It runs beautifully. I also know that it's being sold by a solicitor as an executor's estate. Someone's died, so it has to go today. There's no reserve. We might be looking at a bit of an earner today.
And punters were bagging bargains all day long.
No more.
Our high mileage Aston Martin made 16,500. And when we said the Ferrari 400 was unpopular, we weren't joking. How about just 8 grand? The repatriated Triumph TR4 Roadster, 3,900. And that Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, it was dear. 8 grand.
Okay, the Porsche is coming up next. I reckon done, it's worth about 2,500 quid, but there's a good 500 pounds to sort it out. So I'm going to set my limit at around 1,400 quid and stick to it. So let's see.
Lot 394, the Porsche showing right at the back. £500 we bid for it. 500 we bid for it. You bidding there? 500, 600, 700 seated. At £700 now, at 700. 800 down here near me at 800, standing left. 900 seated at 900. 1,000 near me. 1,100 in 3 places. 1,200. 1,300. 1,400. 1,500. The bids at the back, £1,500. The bids at the back. The car is selling now. Fair warning. At 1,500, it's against you near me. 1,477.
Listed by 100 quid, sold for 1,500 quid, but the cardinal rule is never, ever go over your limit. Someone's bought themselves a cheap Porsche. 6 o'clock, and it's all over. Long day. Most of the stuff made considerably less than estimate, and that would have been absolutely inconceivable 5 years ago. Bargain of the day, though, has to be our Jaguar Mark II. Now, this car comes with bills for around 30 grand's worth of restoration. It was knocked down today to a dealer for £10,250. That is the price of a second-hand Vauxhall Vectra. I know which one I'd have.
Here we go.
Next week, our guide to convertibles. They may be cold in December, but they're cheap. And the Sunbeam Lotus, the original Nutter's hatch.
Next on BBC Two, leaving behind the safety of his corporate office, Floyd Valentine is back on the floor at the kiddies' holiday camp.